Hey, what's going on, everyone? This is Mitch. Good Wednesday morning to you all. Hope you folks are doing awesome out there this morning and having a fantastic start to your day and a great week out there so far. Here to bring you the latest on what's going to happen weather-wise for your Wednesday. Of course, we have another day of severe weather out ahead of us. We have a tornado risk across areas of the Ohio Valley. Not going to be as high end as yesterday's risk. And of course, yesterday's risk definitely did verify. We had multiple reports of tornadoes in Iowa. So certainly ended up being pretty much what we pretty much expected across, like I said, the state of Iowa. Multiple tornadoes reported. I mean, there was a lot of storm chasers on these and live feeds, and saw it all over social media. So hope you guys are faring well in the state of Iowa. And I'm not sure if there was any other tornadoes reported in any other states, but let me know if there was. I might have missed that. Had a very busy day yesterday. It was very busy at work. Then I had to turn around and leave work and go straight to two soccer practices in a row. So honestly, I didn't have a whole lot of time to even look at my phone yesterday and see those storm reports. So let me know what you saw out there in the Midwest. But we're going to break this down in great detail, talk about another, like I said, severe weather day out ahead of us. At the very end of the video, we'll break down tomorrow's risk. Won't get deep into it like we typically do for the next day. We'll do that probably in tonight's video if I can fit one in. But we will mention tomorrow's severe weather risk and Friday's severe weather risk. There's, kind of a bimodal threat today, one being the bigger deal in the Ohio Valley, but there's also a risk of stronger to severe storms in areas of like Kansas into Missouri, especially overnight tonight, as an upper trough is digging down, and that'll bring a multi-day threat of severe weather. Just don't think it'll be as high end. So we'll break it all down in great detail. If you folks have not subscribed, certainly consider doing that. Like the video if you like it. And if anybody has anything that I can pray about or pray over, as always, you guys know the deal. Put those in the comments below. Gives me an opportunity to pray over it, and it gives others an opportunity to do so too. And it's a great way to glorify God, look out for one another, and all that fantastic stuff. Let's get rocking and rolling. So, good bit going on if you kind of look at this right off the dot here. You got some scattered showers all the way down into areas of the southeast. Some of this is not hitting the ground. For example, it shows green over my house, but we're not getting any rain. But there is a little rain falling across areas of the Carolinas. We do have some rain all the way up here into the Central Alps region, some rain moving into western PA. We got rain moving kind of north and northeast of the Great Lakes region into areas of Canada. And then all this rain that you're getting here this morning in areas of Kentucky, Ohio will clear out. This will open up this wide open sector for the atmosphere to destabilize. Therefore, we will get some strong to severe storms. At the same time, you see this energy kind of flowing down out of Canada, already some energy in the Rockies. There's an upper trough diving down right now, and this is going to set up a corridor for favorable lift, favorable winds aloft to initiate some storms across the middle of the country, especially later tonight. So that's what's going on right now. The excessive rainfall, I'm sorry, this is actually watches, warnings, and advisories, my bad. Wind advisories are up for areas of like North Dakota, UP of Michigan, areas of Minnesota. Still got the winter weather advisories up for more snow on the way today into tomorrow. Even some winter storm warnings up for areas of the Rockies and Montana. Bighorn Mountains got these also. No alerts for the Laramie Range or the Rockies of Colorado as of right now. That might change throughout the day. But the entire southern tier of the country, pretty darn quiet. Not a whole lot going on. Eastern U.S., same deal. Pretty quiet out there. Not any really active severe weather warnings out there, kind of like there was yesterday morning around this time. So definitely a much more calm start out there. But the excessive rainfall outlook now, we do have a marginal risk that does extend all the way from the plains all the way to West Virginia. But then we got this little itty bitty, a slight risk where we could have some flash flooding, a 15% risk of it, 15% risk of rainfall exceeding flash flood guidance within 25 miles in a given location. So watch out for that in this section here. Storm Prediction Center, remember, this information could change. I don't expect an enhanced risk to be dropped, but I've said that before, and then we end up getting it. But as of now, two slight risks, one right here, one right here. We're going to zoom into this one, but I do want to mention this really fast. Tornado threat, most likely not going to be there much, this evening into tonight across Kansas and areas of Missouri. I think these storms will be elevated and not really surface, meaning when they're elevated, it typically means not much of a tornado threat. Surface, which means they're a little bit more rooted, that's when you have more of the tornado threat. So not expecting much of that. The wind threat, not expecting much of that either. But the hail threat will be there with some cooler air aloft, dry air aloft, favorable what we call lapse rates will be in place. And we do have, with some of these isolated storms, not only that 15% risk of hail, but a 10% risk in this black outline region of significant hail, which is hail exceeding 2 inch in diameter or larger. Let's zoom into this area though right here. Slight risk does include level 2 out of 5. Cleveland, Detroit, higher populated areas down to Columbus, Dayton, Cincinnati, Athens, Indianapolis. You're just outside of that, but Ann Arbor and Lansing, Flint. I mean, you guys in like the southern UP of Michigan could get some intense storms. I mean, just after lunchtime today. So this is definitely the epicenter of probably the worst weather today. So if you look at what this is driven off of, tornado outlook. In that brown area, there's a 5% risk of a tornado within 25 miles in a given location. The green, a 2% risk. So you don't have that 10% risk, which is really when you bump up from a 5 to a 10, that's when things get serious with the tornado risk. Now, don't get me wrong, a 5% risk needs to be respected also. Any tornado risk does. But I've always personally considered that bump up from 5 to 10 a pretty significant bump up. But the wind outlook, just your standard typical stuff with a slight risk, a 15% risk of winds exceeding 55 to 60 miles per hour with some of these storms. And then the hail outlook, there's that significant risk of hail right out here. Already mentioned that. And then there is that 15% risk in this yellow area of hail exceeding 1 inch in diameter or larger. So let's break it down. What does the HRRR model say for today? Now, I am going to show you the loop in Michigan, too. I know I'm kind of, leaving a good chunk of Michigan out. So stay tuned for my folks in Michigan who are tuning in. This looks like you're getting left out up here. But you're dealing with some morning rain across the Ohio Valley, Ohio, especially eastern Ohio, West Virginia. This will clear out. If you're confused about the time frame, this is in Eastern time. So if you're in Central time, back it up 1 hour. So this is around lunchtime, though. Atmosphere begins to clear out. We continue to deal with just enough lift for some thunderstorms here in eastern, southeastern Ohio, and even into Kentucky. So be mindful of these. But I don't think these are going to be the storms are going to produce that tornado threat, in my opinion. But these could pack a punch getting into western West Virginia, even into Pittsburgh, western PA. But you see these storms starting to fire up here. We'll zoom into that here in a second in Michigan. But let's really just focus in on Ohio and surrounding states. But we might as well mention areas of southern Michigan too in this video, in this section. But you kind of keep these going, right? You see these individual kind of cells popping up here. These are the ones that could produce a risk of all hazards. And we keep these going. And we get into about the 4 or 5 p.m. time frame. Even southern Ontario. Look at these storms. They even got that kind of kidney bean look up here. Watch out, Detroit, around 4 to 5 p.m. Cleveland, you got some very isolated, strong to severe storms popping up. And then we start to get into about 5, 6 p.m. All these storms need to be watched here in eastern Ohio. There's a chance that nothing really gets going in eastern Indiana. So if you're wondering why aren't you mentioning Indiana, well, the HRRR model doesn't really like much getting going. But if they do, could produce severe weather. But you keep these going. These are still packing a punch, 6, 7 p.m. in northeast Ohio especially. And even getting into Erie, PA, western PA, these storms are still ongoing. Extreme northern sections of West Virginia right up here in the Panhandle, northern Panhandle, getting hit pretty good, probably around bedtime tonight if you go to bed at 8, 9, 10 p.m. like me. But these storms continue. They'll start to lose some steam as they kind of cruise across the western sections of PA into southwestern New York. Even get some storms around like the Buffalo area later this evening, most likely. And then these head on out. Now, if we do take a closer look at Michigan, don't want to leave you folks hanging at all. Let's actually just look at the latest short range look here. You keep going. Look at those storms. We could get some storms up here in northern lower Michigan too. I just think you're lacking what we call thermodynamics up here, basically the ingredients for severe weather. But you could get it. But once you start to there's like a dividing line and probably lower Michigan that's going to separate definitely an atmosphere that's more supportive for severe weather and then an atmosphere that's not so much. But you keep these going. These storms down here, they can be quite intense. Large hail, gusty winds, a tornado risk, especially as you get to the tail end of these. So please be mindful of these storms cruising through Lansing, heading towards Flint, heading towards Lake Huron at this point, And look how this kind of bows out. This could produce some damaging winds. If you live in this section right here of lower Michigan, please be mindful. We could get this line of storm surface low more so up here, and definitely some damaging winds with this line of storms that kind of sweeps in and really just like north of Detroit and then heads on over Lake Huron, and with just a stable lake surface. So these storms will probably weaken pretty quickly. I mean, it's still April. These lakes are probably still pretty chilly. So yeah, definitely be mindful of these storms here too. But, we kind of drop back down to Ohio, kind of look at the significant tornado parameter with this. Not very high throughout the afternoon hours. It begins to spike with the tailwind of these line of storms here in southeastern Michigan. But then it really spikes in eastern Ohio. And even though you didn't see many storms firing up in southeastern Ohio, there could be. If they do, you could get a tornado risk. But that significant tornado parameter means that, you remember, the higher the number, the better the ingredients for tornadoes. So it definitely begins to spike in this area right in here in Ohio later on this evening, and then it quickly diminishes. If you look at the updraft Felicity swath, the latest long-range HRRR model really likes this area right here of Ohio. So be mindful of that. If you look at the latest run, what does it show? Hasn't ran yet. Let's see. Yeah, I mean, a little bit further south with this one, but it pretty much just shows right in that 5% risk area. It likes that area the most right here in eastern Ohio. So even sneaking into western PA too, even in the northern sections of West Virginia, be mindful of that tornado threat. So last thing we'll look at is the ingredients driving into this. Dew points, in the 50s in Ohio right now. You head on to your neighbors here in Indiana, much more moist area waking up to. For example, western Tennessee, western Kentucky is a lot more moist and humid than the eastern sections of those states. But watch as we move through here in time. This area of low-level moisture supported for severe weather begins to take over areas of the Ohio Valley. Kind of gets mixed in a little bit, but you're going to have kind of an area of low-level moisture that supports severe weather. Dew points will cruise into the 60s up here in areas of Ohio, and then that moist air will sort of kind of dwindle away as you kind of lose the influence of this surface low to the north. So, you certainly are going to have storm fuel with this setup. You kind of look at the mixed layer Kate, which is a great thing to look at here. And pretty much riding right along that low-level moisture is the higher Cape levels. And sure enough, it begins to spike to over 1,500 joules per kilogram in areas, even all the way up into lower Michigan. And just along that little slither of more favorable low-level moisture, they begin to spike. And then once you get to the more favorable time of the day as far as daytime heating, you start to get Cape levels over 2,000 joules per kilogram. So definitely the energy is rising, especially in Ohio. Can't ignore northeastern Kentucky also, and there will be storms down here too, all the way down to the Tennessee Mid-South Valley down here. So, last thing you'll look at is that a low-level jet that we like to talk about a lot. It's already ramping across these areas right now, but you'll have kind of a secondary push that rides with these storms that will have an opportunity to develop, and this actually helps to kind of get those storms going. And you see right in here, low-level jet pushing 30 to 40 knots, and, actually spikes a little bit higher, over 40 to 45 knots. So that means, winds are going about 50, 55 miles per hour, about a mile above our heads. That's your low-level jet riding over this region. So certainly going to have favorable winds in the lower levels of the atmosphere for some damaging winds and a tornado threat. So be mindful of that. I do want to mention a little bit closer look at the severe weather risk across areas of Kansas and Missouri. Really for tonight, you notice we'll start this around 5 p.m. Central Time, and nothing's going on. You're thinking, why do we have a slight risk in our areas here in eastern Kansas? But you keep going. Some energy begins to get going. Low-level winds, mid-level winds begin to increase as this upper trough drops down, and right as you start to get to closer to midnight, you get one or two storms are going to fire up here in eastern Kansas. Whoever gets hit by these storms, if you live in eastern Kansas, they could produce some pretty large hail. But I would say there's probably over a 75 to 80% chance that your area won't get a drop of rain. But whoever's in that 15 to 20% area that does, not only will you get rain, but you'll probably get some large hail opportunity also. So be mindful of this. Then this energy will kind of cruise into Missouri. I mean, Kansas City, you got this cell popping up right around, 1, 2 a.m. Be mindful of some very isolated, severe storms out there. And all this energy then begins to cruise into Missouri. And doesn't look like there's a whole lot that might get going here in this area. But you head on to your neighbors here. And in Missouri, even showing areas of like Illinois, same kind of deal. You start off this morning, not a whole lot going on. You're finally going to get a break today. But once you get into this evening, the break is short-lived. You start to get a lot more energy that crashes down from the northwest. There's those storms. I mean, this is like 2 a.m. in the morning, cruising across west central Missouri. And then you keep these going. There's some storms around like Columbia, Missouri, around 4 a.m. You got more scattered in nature storms up here in northern Missouri. Storms also in southern sections of Iowa. And you keep these going. This kind of turns into almost a line of storms. And as you're waking up tomorrow morning, you could be dealing, like I said, with a line of storms in southern Iowa, northern Missouri as this is cruising on through. This will set the stage for a severe weather threat across this area for tomorrow. I could see tomorrow's threat going into an enhanced risk. We just got to watch. We'll talk more on that here in a second. So we keep this going. We go into, and we discuss the rest of the lower 48. The southeast today, it'll be warm again. Could get an isolated rogue thunderstorm here across the southeast with just instability beginning to build somewhat, but really not there to really get any storms going. You'll see this little thin kind of line of storms sweep across the mid-south, the Ohio Valley, which we already spoke about, all the way down to the deep south. And this energy will cruise across Alabama, northern Georgia this afternoon, this evening, across the southern Alps, and then eventually could get a little bit of shower activity into Georgia, the Carolinas, as we start to get into later tonight. And then we could get some storms also cruising through, areas of Maryland, eastern West Virginia, northern Virginia, all the way into the Delmarva region, kind of overnight tonight. And then we'll wake up tomorrow morning, maybe with a little bit of shower activity across areas of the southeast. But a little bit closer look at this storm opportunity today in the deep south. There's those storms kind of getting going, maybe a little storm action north of Meridian, up here kind of between Birmingham and Huntsville. Could get a strong to severe storm or two in these areas, very possible. And then we start to get into 4 or 5 p.m. storms, here in northeast Alabama, northwest Georgia. Could get some storms in Atlanta around dinner time tonight. Could get some same thing with Birmingham. And then you keep these going, and they'll still probably be ongoing a little bit. But we'll see what happens with these. So definitely be mindful of some storms across this region today. The northeast, energy will fly in from this morning. Will bring widespread shower activity across areas of PA, western New York for this afternoon. This will eventually get into like New York City. Enough energy will refire back up for areas of like northern VA, like I said, Maryland. You guys, even southern and central sections of PA with this initial morning energy getting into this afternoon. Could bring some thunderstorms in this region down here in the mid-Atlantic. This rain will begin to overspread southern New England. Like I said, rain showers tonight for New York City all the way through Long Island, southern New England. And then we'll watch those storms that will begin to weaken, that will, create a tornado issue here in Ohio later on this afternoon, this evening. So this initial push of rain will begin to kind of diminish, and then the second one will take over. Surface low way up here, so you don't have a lot of pushing mechanism for all this shower activity, but you're waking up tomorrow morning with still a lot of shower activity most likely in New York State, and pretty much all of New England, except maybe Maine and New Hampshire. So South Central U.S., not a whole lot going on today. You can get a little shower activity, maybe a pop-up downpour in northern, Louisiana. Maybe some storms that could sneak into sort of the Big Hill Country, southwestern sections of Texas. You got some stronger storms into Mexico. Some of these storms could creep across, the line there and sneak into Texas. We'll see what happens. And then we could get definitely some widespread shower and maybe even storm activity in southern Texas today. So, if you live in southern Texas, maybe some rain. This rain could greet you guys across the Texas coastline throughout the overnight hours. And then you're waking up tomorrow morning not as much activity. Could be waking up to some shower activity in southwestern Mississippi, Louisiana for tomorrow morning. Now, you move into the north central U.S. The surface low is cruising through like Wisconsin right now. This actually could bring a little bit of storm activity late this morning until around lunchtime across the UP of Michigan, more elevated in nature, maybe some small hail, maybe a rumble of thunder will cruise across the UP of Michigan, north and northwest of this low. This is more of a chillier rain up here in northeast Minnesota, the northern sections of Wisconsin. There's those nasty looking storms here and down here in lower Michigan. Could get some downpours from Green Bay to Milwaukee, very possible. And then this energy will this low will basically cruise right over the UP of Michigan, most likely, or cruise right over the northern sections of Lake Michigan. And then all that energy will move. And then you're greeted with more energy. This is from the upper trough. You could get a little wintry mix overnight in northern areas of Nebraska, maybe even sections of southern South Dakota. And this is kind of just bringing another plume of moisture as far north as like Minneapolis, all the way into western sections of Wisconsin as you're getting into overnight tonight. And then you're greeted to a lot of rain, shower, and even storm activity in the state of Iowa for tomorrow morning. The western U.S., we're dealing with some snow this morning. In the higher elevations of the northern Rockies, we will continue to get energy that flies down with this lower pressure moving in from this upper trough. Snow flying around in northern Wyoming, snow flying around in Montana, Idaho, and just depends on your elevation, just like always, especially as we're getting deeper into the year now. We get into the overnight hours, things taper off for the most part, but waking up tomorrow morning potentially with some snow showers in northern sections of Minnesota, North Dakota, very possible. Some April snow showers out here. But guys, the rest of the central and southern and southwestern, Rocky, southwestern U.S., even the Pacific Northwest, pretty quiet out there. But there's that snow that could add up over the next 24 hours. Bighorn Mountains will be definitely the breadwinner with this. Higher elevations of northwestern Wyoming, and then a few to several inches possible in the higher elevations of the Rockies of western Montana, getting even into those higher elevated regions in Idaho. So temperatures today, there's that boundary with that upper trough separating much more cooler air with pretty warm spring air. You can actually see where that line of storms is across the eastern U.S. right into here with a pocket of cooler air. But, in the south, this is basically the entire southern tier of the country. If you're not getting rain, you're probably warming into the 80s at least. Some areas in Texas well into the 90s. Somebody might hit 100 degrees in west central Texas today. But there's that cooler air up here in the northern Rockies with that lower pressure moving in. If you're not under the influence of this, then, it's going to warm on up. You're starting to warm up. You're starting to get closer to summer down here in the desert Southwest. So Death Valley, even Phoenix, and definitely the desert regions down here, starting to see more days in the 90s now. But even the Valley of California, 70s, 80s, nice in the big cities of the Southwest for sure. So there is a severe weather threat for tomorrow, and I could see this increasing to an enhanced risk in this area right here. But two areas to watch: this one down here, this one up here across sections of the Midwest and the Mississippi Valley. There is a 5% risk of a tornado. This includes, it includes St. Louis, all of southern Illinois, very small section of southwestern Indiana, including Evansville, very, very, very small sections of western Kentucky, and like I said, areas of Missouri. 2% risk of a tornado in the green area. And then we look at the wind outlook with this. Two areas to watch for damaging winds. Okay, appreciate that. In the yellow, 15% risk of winds exceeding 55 to 60 miles per hour in both these areas. So we'll have to watch tomorrow. Hail threat also. 15% risk of hail exceeding 1 inch in diameter or larger in both of these yellow areas. And, I will mention this really fast. Let's see. Let's go back to this. Okay, I wasn't going to do this, but I'll do it on the fly here. So this is waking up tomorrow morning in this area. You got these storms up here in the Midwest. What's going to happen is these storms will continue. When you get the heating of the day down here in this region, you'll get, storm energy that will build, and these storms will intensify as they cruise on down to St. Louis and affect areas of all of pretty much eastern Missouri, getting down into southern sections of Illinois. And you notice how these are a little bit discreet looking? I'm telling you, you're going to have an appreciable tornado threat tomorrow across the mid-Mississippi Valley right in here. Watch out these cells down here too, but I definitely think you'll have more of a flow aloft that supports some rotating thunderstorms in this area. And this continues. I mean, this looks like a very stormy day tomorrow for your Thursday across this region of the country. Look at these bigger storms popping up here in northwestern Arkansas, eastern Oklahoma. Definitely some scattered boomers down here for sure, down here in Kentucky and Tennessee. And this really develops into a linear type deal, just a nasty line of storms stretching from northern Arkansas all the way almost into the Ohio Valley. And this is around 8, 9 p.m. tomorrow. And these continue. They begin to lose some steam. But you look at the updraft Felicity swath with this for tomorrow. And we'll have to go back to this. And it's definitely, I mean, look at this. Look how it spikes with this line of storms. So I could see a bump up to an enhanced risk for an increased damaging wind threat and maybe even an increased tornado risk in this area tomorrow. I really could. So we look at a threat of severe weather for our Friday too. Maybe I can get me a good old spring summer thunderstorm here in Columbia. But we will run the risk of strong to severe storms from basically Birmingham to Atlanta to Columbia, Charlotte, all the way up to Raleigh, Greenville, Spartanburg area. So we'll talk more on that when it gets a little closer. That's all I got, guys. Thank y'all for tuning in. Y'all stay safe in the Ohio Valley tonight. Well, this afternoon, this evening, and I'll talk to you most likely this evening. God bless.